but not to look cool or to make money necessarily.
It's so strange. It's something that's incredibly strange to even think about. And as this documentary we're working on, I looked at this and I interviewed a woman, Roman, who was an incredible entrepreneur, and he was born in Russia. They had become best friends. They lived in San Francisco, and he passed away unexpectedly. And she's a technologist.
If you want to speak about your subscription, press 1.
Exactly, and this is all run by artificial.
We have a clip here.
What was it like the first time you texted?
Today has been a day more than ever in the history of SIME, where we've been critical to technology and seeing what is the ethical boundaries that we need to bear in mind when we create and build technology.
This is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
I was saying backstage, this is like, I feel like we should be doing a routine or like Beyonce or something
like
out here.
Freebird or something.
Yeah, go ahead, you could sing it. I'm just kidding.
I actually don't know that song.
Well,
Hi, everybody, thank you.
Yeah, you guys, thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited to sit down with you. You are an incredible actor, but also an entrepreneur, and I don't know how many folks know all you've done online for artists and helping them collaborate. But before we get into hit record, I just want to talk about the internet. I just feel like you have been kind of obsessed or interested in the internet. Before YouTube was created, you were creating these videos on your own. You've always...
I sort of started using Apple's when Final Cut Pro started, and I was able to like edit video in my house. That was incredible. Like now we take it for granted that you can edit video just on your phone or whatever, but when I was growing up and when Hit Record started, my schedule was not very busy. And I didn't think of it as a company.
So a California court ruled that Apple needs to help the FBI essentially hack our own user's iPhone. Okay, well, here's how the FBI puts it. But here's the thing. It's not like Apple knows his password, and iPhones erase after the wrong password is entered 10 times. What the court wants Apple to do is to actually create new software. They need access to the phone, and it was granted. Apple's just not letting them in. Okay, wait a sec, the FBI is not calling it a backdoor, Harris. The court ruling, well, let me explain the tech side. Apple says once you've made the new software, it's essentially Pandora's box. It exists to help the bad guys break into any iPhone. But Apple has helped law enforcement dozens of times in the past. Apple was simply able to extract the data, but the newest software is actually more secure. Without cracking the password, they can't access anything. Right, but think about the question that raises. Does this ruling give the government the ability to force Apple engineers to actually major precedent? Look, investigators have already gotten key location data from this phone using cell towers. And the shooters had ties to ISIS, contacts, messages. That's because it's encrypted, which is important for customers around making a vocal commitment to privacy. It's also a marketing ploy. To obtain data, there needs to be tools that protect national security. When Apple announced iOS 8, it doesn't stop because of government information requests by the local government. There's a lot at stake and a lot of sympathy for these victims. For Apple and the FBI, this case is a battle in the making for years. The outcome will set major precedent.
So clearly I missed out because I did not get to hear any Oasis to $1 billion company. That's not easy, as I'm sure a lot of folks here know. Got bored and you were working on a poker bot and you're clearing your mom's house and putting up...
But the problem was, for those of you who have had the pleasure or pain of taking DS...
More illegal in the US right around that time, so I stopped working on it. We do so well that everybody thinks this is a really important, or everybody knows how important this problem is.
Are we entrepreneurs, building companies? Awesome, awesome. All in New York? I see some heads, okay. Well, I am happy to be here with Dennis because I remember covering Foursquare. Foursquare was actually one of the first companies I covered. And Dennis was one of the first people I ever interviewed on camera, and I was terrified.
This was 2009, South by Southwest.
2009, no. So in startup years, I'm like 80.
Yeah, it's good to see you again then.
Yeah, nice to see you too. But instead of catching up, we're gonna do an interview. So in these years since I've interviewed you, I guess recently you had some big news, huge news for the company. You basically split the app into two. That is a bold and ambitious move. So could you take me a little bit behind the reasoning of why you decided to do Foursquare and then create a new app called Swarm?
Sure. How many of you guys are Foursquare users? Have you guys downloaded Swarm? Play with it so far? We got some people here, which is great. Thank you. So what we did is we, last week we launched our first unbundled app, which was the Swarm app, and it's something that we announced a couple weeks before. It really comes from us thinking about all the things that we're doing at Foursquare and all the different pieces that we're trying to put together in the same app. And we've always had the story about you're checking into places, you have this awareness of where people are, where people are going, and then we can unlock this amazing search experience based off of all of that data. I think one of the things that we realized was that parts of those stories are being misunderstood or not being fully communicated because the app was really complex. And we look at what's going on in the app ecosystem. So we generally find that the best and the most successful apps are the ones that are simple and easy. You can explain them in one sentence. And that was one of the reasons that we wanted to unbundle the apps. So we could make one app be all about the best possible, best, fastest, easiest way to keep up and meet up with friends. And then we could turn the Foursquare app into something that's solely about finding great places and discovering great experiences. It really allows us to simplify the experience. And I think it's really what users are expecting out of apps now as well, like something very simple, very quick to use.
So when we look at kind of the division, now Foursquare is more discovery. Swarm, as you said, is kind of more about sharing your information with your friends. So, when we think about Foursquare, oftentimes we think about the check-in, right? Yep. And I know that the business, everything about Foursquare has evolved over the last years. So this might sound weird to say, but is the check-in becoming irrelevant?
I don't think the check-in is irrelevant, right? So if you think about, a check-in is really just a way to know that a particular user has a relationship with a certain place, was at a certain place at a certain time. And if you go back to us doing this in 2009, the only way to put those two things together was to put a button in the phone that said, hey, when you tap this, that means you're at a certain place. We built so much technology and we built so much interesting data about the places that people go. We built all this stuff over the last 5 years or so. We're kind of in this world where you can imagine, what if the check-in just kind of happened all the time? What if I just walked into the Metropolitan Pavilion and Foursquare knows, oh, you're here, I'll let people know that you're nearby. What if the recommendation engine just realized that, hey, you walked into this coffee shop and you spent a couple minutes there, and then you went to this Italian restaurant, and then this is the place that you went to for lunch. And what if you didn't have to check into those places for us to learn about the places that you went to in the real world? And so that's why we're starting to think about what's the best social experience that we can build that understands some of this, the neighborhood awareness, which is Swarm. And if you can imagine what the next version of Foursquare will look like, what are the amazing things that we can do if we don't need people to hit that button every single time? A version of Foursquare that didn't have an explicit check-in button, that would be a pretty awesome thing.
Interesting. And when we look at the new version of Foursquare, not Swarm, but Foursquare, many people have said that this is now the time that you guys are really positioning yourself against Yelp. The Yelp killer, whatever people like to say. Do you guys see yourself now as a big competitor for Yelp, against Yelp? Yeah,
to be honest, we always looked at ourselves as being, being entrenched in this local search space. And specifically, it's always been about how do you reinvent local search. Local search right now, we have a sense that it just feels really broken. If everyone in this room went and did a search for a coffee shop nearby or a lunch place or a dinner recommendation, there's a good chance that everyone in this audience would get exactly the same results in the same order, and that just feels really, really broken. I mean, the search results should be tailored based on do you spend a lot of time in this neighborhood? Do you spend a lot of time in the East Village? Have you gone to places around here? What are the places you like to go to? Where have your friends gone to? That just seems very, very obvious. And no one's doing that in local search. So, without, going through the list of people that are doing local search that way right now, our goal is to go out and really reinvent local search, reinvent local discovery. And it's not just personalized local recommendations. It's how do you build a search engine that tells you what's awesome about the real world, as opposed to you having to go into your phone all the time and teasing that information out of it. If this is my first time I've ever been in this neighborhood, if this is the first time I've ever been in this city, Foursquare should wake up and be like, hey, you're totally out of context. These are the things that you should pay attention to here. Based on the life that you live in the East Village, these are the things you should do in this neighborhood. Based off the life you do in, you live in New York, these are the things you should experience in San Francisco. There's a huge opportunity to do all this stuff with contextual awareness and this ambient awareness of where you are in the context that you're in. And we're right in front of a lot of that.
You are so obsessed with search, right? And location. Before Foursquare, there was Dodgeball. And you meet, at least for me, I interview lots of different entrepreneurs and they all go try to do, a lot of times they'll do something, then they'll do something completely different.
Yep.
You are all about location. I'm pretty sure you must have come out of the womb saying location, location, location. Why are you so obsessed with location?
It's less like location. It's more of this, it's this idea that we hit on back in the Dodgeball days. Dodgeball was my earlier startup. And it's like, can you make software that makes cities easier to use? Can you make things that like you use on the street that help you have a better experience of the next like 1 hour or 3 hours or 24 hours? And it goes back to like a lot of our like early experiences with social networking online. Like this is back in the Friendster days, where you'd spend a lot of time like building your profile, and then you'd close the laptop and it wouldn't do anything for you. Like you'd go walk around the real world and it was like that thing didn't even exist. And so we always thought, like, what are the things that we can do that learn about the people that you hang out with in the real world, the places that you go to in the real world, and how can we use all of that stuff to make you have a better experience of, either your neighborhood or your commute to work or your, trip to Paris or whatever. And it's like we've made like these little incremental improvements over time. Like we've been working in this space for like 10 years, a little bit more than 10 years. And the stuff that we were talking about 10 years ago, like we can finally do that stuff now. Like I can get off the plane in San Francisco and Foursquare wakes up and it's like, oh, you're in San Francisco? These are the 3 places that you should go to based off of the things that you've done in New York. Like that stuff, that's awesome. No one else is doing stuff like that.
And now when we look at kind of the latest business moves, and now that you guys have Swarm, do you worry? I mean, first of all, creating an app and getting people to sign on, as much as we in the media like to say, oh, this is a great success and win, not many people can do that. Mm-hmm. So do you worry that now that you've got another app, it'll be difficult to get people as excited and get people to kind of go over to Swarm as well?
No, we think of it more as like, great products will build a large audience. And, of course, like we have this huge audience amassed with Foursquare. There's more than 50 million people that have registered for the service. It's like it's a very large audience. But at the same time, it's like the products that we have, like as great as they are, like we need to tell a better story, a cleaner story about that. And so our thinking is like, hey, let's just make the best possible, app for helping people keep up and meet up with their friends. And if we do that better than anyone else, like all those other problems just take care of themselves. And so that V1 that we launched last week, I guess pretty good. I'm really proud of that first version of the app. If you start to imagine, like, what does 1.5 look like? What does 2.0 look like? That's a whole different genre of software that we started out owning, and we can continue to own that, but just as a separate standalone experience. We can make that really as rich as we want it to be. What
about, you're collecting all this valuable data, and you have been collecting all this valuable data for a very long time. Location is sensitive data. Every other day, I think I'm on talking about how something's been breached and someone's, there's lots of hacking now. How do you make sure, especially with Swarm, where it's almost like it's really encouraging friends to say where they are, I'm getting all these notifications. How do you make sure that you protect that data?
I think a lot of it is just, it's making sure that people understand what type of information that we're getting from the Foursquare service, and then also putting people in control of the data. And this is stuff that we learned when we were back at, we were back working at Google, and Google took this stuff very, very seriously. And I think we got really serious about it because Google taught us to be that way. Anyway, so when we built Foursquare, we made we made sure that we were very clear about, hey, when you check into places, we keep a record of it. If you don't want that, you can delete it one at a time. If you don't want the whole history, you can delete the entire history. If you delete your account, we will delete all the data. It's just being clear with people about it. And I think we've, if anything, we've gone, we've tried really hard to make sure that people really are aware of the things that we're doing, and if they're not comfortable with them, how to get out of them. But I feel like the services that we've built have been pushing on the boundaries of what's possible with phones and what's possible with ambient awareness of some of these devices. And so it's a big responsibility to do that. We're inventing the rules. And I feel like if we do it really well the first time around, then other people will kind of copy our example, and that would just be the norm with the settings and whatnot.
Back in 2009, not to sound like an old person, but when I used to interview startup founders and I'd say, how are you going to make money? They would just kind of laugh at me like, that's not even a question you're allowed to ask at this point, right? Well,
I was probably guilty of that in 2009.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did laugh at me when I asked you that. But I now get to ask you that. So,
sure.
Tell me about the business from 2009 to now. What's your business value, and where do you see kind of the future of really being able to turn this into a money-making business?
Yeah, I mean, we're 5 years into Foursquare now, and the company is generating a significant amount of revenue, which is a great story. There's 6 different revenue-generating sources for the company. 4 of them are advertising-based. Some of them are based around merchant services and data licensing arrangements, like the one that we did with Microsoft earlier this year. I think there's something really interesting going on with the Foursquare product now, and I think a lot of you guys work in advertising. right? Yeah, we've done, maybe we've worked with some of you folks, and I think this goes a little underreported, but of the top 100.
Sorry about that, guys.
No,
Go ahead.
It's good, fine. Of the top like 100 brands.
But do
in ad
it for
age.
me, Dennis.
No,
go ahead.
we work with half the top 100 brands.
No,
in
go.
Foursquare. Like
Okay.
we're working with a lot of these folks. We're doing some amazing things with trying to empower local merchants around the world. We have a self-service platform that runs local ads in more than 80 countries. We've partnered with agencies in Turkey and Brazil to start to enhance those experience both with local merchants and with brands. And the business is maturing very, very nicely. And it's I think people look at us and they're like, oh, you guys are doing all this stuff around around search and around location awareness and friend finding. And I think the larger part of the success that we've seen on the business side is I don't think people pay as much attention to it. But we've been doing great work, and the company's doing great.
And so let's look at the future of Foursquare, right? Because you guys are almost 5 years along, or 5 years along. What do you see as Foursquare of the future? I mean, it's two different apps now. I know that I read internally you guys call Foursquare kind of Batman, and then and you can tell me if I'm wrong about this.
No, you got it. Yeah.
Foursquare is apparently Batman, and Swarm is Robin.
Well, yeah. Internally, when we were unbundling the apps, this is before we had the Swarm name. We had code names. There's like Batman and Robin. Like Batman is like the hero. Foursquare that's doing all this amazing stuff with local search, and Robin is the sidekick that's helping make these experiences work. Now, I know the new Foursquare app isn't out yet. It'll be out later this summer. But once I have both of them side by side on my phone, and it's great because you kind of bump back and forth between the two of them. It's like a really nice kind of seamless experience. Wait, what was the question?
Is Batman going to make money, and Robin's probably going to make money? It could make money. Is Batman kind of where you guys are really kind of putting the efforts?
No, it's like if you look at the advertising products that are in both, and we haven't enabled advertising, and we just haven't turned it on yet in Swarm. But Foursquare is great at driving people to specific places. And so ads that are meant to drive people either into a national retail or into a local business, it's one of the things Foursquare is really good at. Swarm is great at knowing, location awareness. Like, are you in a certain neighborhood? Are you at a specific place? And being able to serve up ads that are very specific to that experience. And so these ad products that we've had over the last 2 years, they've 2.5 years, they've matured a lot, and we've been able to break them into different categories. And we've been finding that, the different formats fit very nicely into the Swarm world and into the Foursquare world.
And I want to pivot a bit since we're in a tech conference, and I want to talk about you as an entrepreneur, because I guess I've known you for about 5 years, and a lot of times we don't talk in the media about how difficult it is to start a company and to grow a company. You see the big wins, you see the folks getting bought for billions of dollars, but not many people talk about the lows of entrepreneurship that go along with the highs of entrepreneurship. I interviewed Ben Horowitz, and he told me at one point he just wanted to die when he was starting a company. I mean, can you take me to some of those moments? It can be really dark.
Yeah, I think it's, the startup story is generally glamorized, I think, and whether it's like by the media or TV or whatnot. But it's like, it's really hard. Like you're not signing up to do this job for a year or 6 months. You're signing up to do the job for as long as it takes. And we're 5 years into Foursquare, and I'm kind of 10 years into this space in general. And it's just, I think we're just at that point where a lot of the pieces are starting to work. Like the company generates significant revenue. We can do a lot of the technical things that we wanted to do 5 years ago, but we couldn't because the phones didn't exist, and our level of data sophistication was a little bit less. And also we built a huge organization. We're about 165 people now across 3 different offices. And you have to build that team in order to build the stuff that we make. And it's not trivial to do. And in order to grow the company and deal with, hey, we're onboarding people and sometimes people leave, and we launched these new products, and now we have a sales organization, now we have an engineering group in San Francisco. These are all big hurdles that you have to face. And Ben Horowitz, who's he wrote that amazing book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. He's one of our investors. He sits on our board. He's the one giving us a lot of advice on, hey, I've seen how this goes wrong. This is what you guys should do to protect against that. And it's great to have people either on our board or invested in the company or just as advisors that have seen this story before through the lens of a bunch of different startups and they can, kind of guide us through what works and what doesn't.
So going through all the phases you've gone through, I mean, I remember when Facebook check-in was supposed to kill you guys, and people thought maybe you should have sold. I mean, like, people have pelted rocks for a while, but that's part of this business.
Well, it's part of the gig. It's like people have every 6 months someone writes a big article about, oh my God, Foursquare is totally dead. And that's been happening since 2009. And the first time you read it, you're like, oh my God, maybe they're right. And then 2010, you're like, what if they are? And then you just kind of forget about it. It's like people are always, we got an equal amount of people that are praising us for seeing this vision of the future and carrying it out, as you do people that talk shit about the company because they don't really understand a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do.
So what is your advice? I know every time I see you at a conference, people are always kind of approaching you and asking you for advice. So what's your advice to people in New York starting out right now who are trying to build a company?
I think the best advice is just like stay focused on the stuff that you're most passionate about. You're kind of, we were talking a couple minutes ago about, hey, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been super focused on location. Like I feel lucky because early on in my career, I found the thing that I like to do, which is like build software that you see your friends using on the street and they like using it. Like it's kind of general. And we've just continued to try to build better and better and better versions of that software, and we've been doing it for a long time. And I think like we're pretty good at it now. But that's the thing. It's like we found the thing that we really like to do. We got a bunch of people around us, great people around us, built a great team, and we just kind of continue to execute that vision like a little piece at a time, and try our best not to get distracted by the people that don't understand or that want to predict that we're not going to be around.
When we think about Foursquare, it's the first company that comes to mind when you think about New York tech. Mm-hmm. You guys were back in like 2009 when people started really, or 2008 when people started really talking about the tech community in New York. You guys were the company to really kind of come out with that. What are the advantages of starting a company in New York, and what are some of the disadvantages? I mean, is it tough to find talent?
Yeah, just real quick, like we're not the first New York tech company. I mean, like we're part of probably what's like the third generation of New York tech. Like I moved down here in 1998 and I worked at a tech research company that was like, interviewing and doing research on the 200 tech startups that were in the space at the time. And then there was like the 2004, 2005, like second generation period where we were at Google for a bit. And then I think there's this generation in which like you have, there's a lot more investors, there's a lot more entrepreneurs, there's a bigger support network here. I mean, there's like a couple hundred people that are here now, which is amazing. Like, this just wasn't the way it was 10 years ago. And we kind of all take it for granted now, but like, hey, you guys can network and find engineers and like, help each other out and get feedback on, how to raise money or how to manage a board. Like, that network exists in a way that didn't exist. The Valley has 10 generations, 15 generations of this stuff. And so like this space in New York continues to evolve. It's just like we're on the third generation versus the 10th generation.
What are the advantages? No.
What are the advantages?
That was an ode to New York tech.
Yeah. Well, no.
What are the advantages?
The advantages are, I think one of the things I like best about New York tech is that it's like the 6th or 7th most important thing in New York. It's like you've got media and finance and fashion and music and 4 other things underneath that, and then you got a whole bunch of like tech people as well. And it's not like the defining thing of New York. And I think that's I think that makes the scene a lot richer, and I think that makes the companies a little bit more diverse, and I think that makes the thinking here a lot more diverse. It makes it harder to find engineers. Like it's one of the reasons we have a San Francisco office, like, hey, there's a lot more engineers out in San Francisco. Here, as like we're one of the bigger fishes in a relatively small pond, like we can attract some of the best engineering talent, and I'm really thankful for that. But there's definitely pros and cons that go along with it.
And when we talk about the phases of tech, mobile has been all the rage, and we keep hearing about hardware and wearables and that kind of thing. And I'm just interested to know, when we look at wearables in the future, where does Foursquare fit? I know you guys have an app for Pebble, and I know you're very active in general. I was joking to him earlier, his Instagram feed makes me feel like the laziest person in the world. I mean, where does Foursquare fit when it comes to kind of wearable kind of hardware?
Yeah, I'll tell you. When we launched Swarm like a week ago, TechCrunch wrote this article, and the headline was like, it was about Swarm. It was like the rise of the invisible apps, and which is my favorite headline that came out about what we're doing, because it really got to the essence of what we're trying to do at Foursquare. Like, yes, we have a Swarm app. Yes, we have a Foursquare app, but like underneath all of that, there's this level of technology that we built that we're trying to put on different apps that it understands the relationship that you have with the world. These are the places I go to, these are the places I don't go to, these are the neighborhoods I'm familiar with, these are the people that I overlap with, these are the types of places I like, these are the places I never went back to. And having that understanding, without having to press any buttons, just having this ambient awareness, allows us to do just amazing, amazing things that no one else has ever done. And so, like, it's one thing just to have it on your phone. Like, hey, yes, I will open up the app and use these amazing experiences. It's another thing to have, like, these invisible apps that just, hey, you landed in New Orleans, happens to be that 4 of your friends are here, we'll let you know about that. Oh, you're walking down the street, you should know about this secret bookshop because you love bookshops. Like, that's another layer of it. And then you've got this whole layer of, like, other devices. Like, whether it's, hey, I'm wearing my Pebble watch, and that's the thing that tells me, you know, to order the, you know, the really awesome appetizer at the restaurant, or whether, you know, people actually get to the point where we're wearing Google Glass and we power some of that experience, or whether it's like something in your car, like the moment that you put your car in park, the GPS doesn't get dark, like it lights up and it's like, oh, you just parked your car? Foursquare says these are the 10 things you should do right around where you parked your car. Like, that's very clearly how the world should work. And like, you know, we've built this data and technology layer that can power all that stuff. And I think you're gonna see a lot of that over the next couple of years or so. Like right now we're trained, like if you want any piece of information in the world, you take this thing out of your pocket and you light it up and you press the screen a bunch of times. But like we're trying to race towards this world where like we just kind of understand what you're doing and we understand where you're going. And before you even think about asking Foursquare to help you find something, we're like, hey, this is the thing around the corner that you should know about. Like, how do we use technology to give people like superpowers, like see through walls, see around corners, find awesome stuff. And we should be able to do that through a wide variety of devices and a wide variety of different scenarios.
And we're going to have to wrap up in a couple minutes, and we're going to have time for questions, so you guys think of questions. But just a couple quick questions before we go. What are you really excited about now? You sounded like you're really excited about that. That was exciting.
Well, yeah, that's the stuff I'm excited about. That's the reason we started the company. Like, that's the reason we started doing this stuff at NYU years ago, because like that was the version of the future that we imagined, and like we're building it. Like, it's not like, hey, wouldn't that be cool? I'll read about it in a science fiction book, and someone else will go build it. It's like we are actually building the stuff that we said we would build. So that's exciting. The other side of it is just like, you know, while we're building all this awesome stuff, like we kind of built this amazing company that's inspired a lot of people in New York to do similar things. That's going to inspire a lot of Foursquare employees, like sometime in the future, to probably go on and do great things. And it's like, you know, the other part of it, it's like we're like a real business. We're generating a lot of revenue. We're working with big national advertisers. We're inventing products that exist in the ad space, in the ad technology space. We're just like, it makes me really proud that as a company, we are doing a wide variety of stuff that just hasn't been done before. And we're doing it with a team that was built, like, you know, that was largely built here in New York. And that's, like, I'm really proud of that.
And I guess last question, I always just ask every entrepreneur this, so you're not necessarily special in this question, but what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? That's a good question. There's a lot of things that keep me up at night.
Well, the good news is we have like a minute. So
I know, to a minute to answer.
But we can keep going though.
It's running an organization that's as large as ours, and when I say large, I'm 165 people, and I know this quote will come back and haunt me when we're like 500 or 1,000 people, but it's like, it's a lot of work. You know, I've never, you know, this is the first time I've done this job. We're learning on the job. There's things that we get right. There's things that we screw up. But I think overall we're doing a pretty good job at it. But, you know, keeping a large organization focused and keeping that many people happy and recruiting new talent and fighting off, you know, the 10 other startups or 10 other larger companies that are just like trying to copy us and, you know, are largely inspired by us. That's tough. Like, thankfully, we have a great team in place. So, like, I lose less sleep than I used to do. But like in 2009, 2010, like I was literally losing sleep over all the things that could go wrong. And not to say that it's any easier now, but like, hey, we have a lot of people in place and kind of distribute the lack of sleep through the organization.
And just to follow up, to do that and to be able to not sleep and not want to sleep, and build your own company, is this something people are either born with, you've got the entrepreneur DNA, or is this something that can be learned? Or is it just, if you're an entrepreneur, if there's nothing else in the world you can do besides a company, just go do it?
I don't particularly identify, like personally I don't identify with like, hey, you're an entrepreneur or you're a serial entrepreneur. I'm more like, there's things that we wanted to build and no one else is building them, so we just built them. And as long as there's stuff that we want built that doesn't exist yet, we'll just continue doing that. So I see it more that way. Like, the stuff that we're most passionate about is building products that people love. And then I think it's amazing that we built this entire company around it. We built this entire sales force. We're generating revenue, we're doing a great job. But the thing that really gets me fired up is just building stuff that people love to use.
Cool. So we're not leaving the stage until apparently everyone here downloads Swarm. Is that
Yeah, we just locked the doors. So,
sorry, guys. Anyway, thank you, and I think we can open up to questions if any of you guys have questions.
Thanks. Thanks for the ode to New York Tech. I've been back and forth between here and Silicon Valley since I was a child, and I've been frustrated by, not being the third generation. I'm glad that it is now, so thanks for that. I was talking with a friend of mine the other day about Godzilla, and we're trying to remember the name of the actor who was in the original version, in the American version, and I was thinking, who is that? Who is that? It's not Ray Milland, and he eventually had to look it up. It's Raymond Burr. And so this is about the example you gave, where we're trained to look at the device in our pocket for everything. Mm-hmm. But you know how you have type ahead, you turn off type ahead sometimes because it doesn't give you the word that you want? Mm-hmm. I mean, what are your thoughts and feelings about where we are right now versus where we're supposed to be with that seamlessness that you're getting at?
Yeah, let me give you 3 answers. Number 1, I saw Godzilla last night. I thought it was okay. Not worth the 3D. Number 2, the thing that we're most passionate about at Foursquare is doing that, not predictive queries, but more predictive awareness of great stuff around you, specifically tied to things in the real world. The problem that you're describing, hey, we were having this conversation, but I still had to go to my phone. I think that's a really fascinating problem. That's not a Foursquare one. But to address your question, do you have an Xbox by any chance? I just got this Xbox One, and you set it up, and you can talk to it. You talk to your TV, you say, Xbox, do something, and it does it. And if you just say Xbox in the middle of a conversation, it picks up on it, even if you weren't talking to it. So I can imagine a world in which your phone, Google, whatever, is kind of listening to the conversation, can sense the fact that you're unsure about something, and just kind of hey, I actually know the answer. If you want me, you don't have to ask, I know it. Is that annoying? Is it creepy? Is that the future? Is it too weird? Whatever. Maybe that's a question for them to figure out, but I can imagine that things kind of go in that direction.
Hey, Dan. I have a question.
Told you, I locked the doors.
Right.
Everyone downloads Swarm but me.
I have a question that's in 2 parts about Swarm. The first is, how have you noticed people using, what has been the reaction to the ambient location sharing?
Yeah.
And has people been turning it off? And the second to that is, how important is that to the future of the experience of Swarm? Because, or I guess trying to get more people to use it that wouldn't use Foursquare in the first place, that don't care about checking it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in that question. One of the things that Foursquare is an awesome product if, let's say, old Foursquare check-ins, when all of your friends are checking in all the time. It just enables magic things to happen. Hey, you know where everyone is all the time, and you overlap with them more. If people get that check-in fatigue and they don't check in every place that they go, it becomes less valuable. So one of the things we thought a lot about was, okay, how do we make it valuable for those people that don't want to, for people that don't want to check in, but they don't want their exact location broadcasted all the time? And we did a lot of experiments. Do you put people as dots on a map? Do you automatically check them into places? And those things are very clear we didn't want to do that. But we settled on this idea of neighborhood awareness. If you just have a general awareness of, hey, is someone in my neighborhood or are they not? Are they in my city? Are they not? What does that do for meeting up with people, for spontaneous meetups? And generally, people are, we've heard very, very few negative pieces of feedback on it. It's hey, this is great. This is enabling the whole group of friends that didn't check in everywhere they go to, I can still use Foursquare and get a benefit out of where they happen to be, and it makes it easier to meet up with them. And that's really what we were going for. The app's only been out a week, so you got to give me a little bit more time to do a full eval of the whole thing. But it's the feedback so far has been fantastic. We crammed a lot of new stuff in there, and a lot of it has been very well received. So we're really excited about that.
Question?
Oh, the other part of your question was how important is the neighborhood awareness to the future of what we're trying to do? I very much believe that we are inventing what the future of local search and discovery looks like, and the future of these making cities easier to use apps. And a big part of that is like using the sensors that are baked into all of your phones to, to learn about the real world. And to learn about the real world, generally they need to be aware of what's going on. Like, are you in this place? Where did you go? Are you moving? Are you stopped? And so Swarm is one of the, one of our early attempts to like, hey, if we have this type of awareness, can we enable people to meet up? We've had a product since 2011 called Radar, which is now called like real-time recommendations. This is the thing, it's like when you walk into a restaurant, we tell you what to order, right? But in order to do that, we have to have we have to be paying attention to some of those sensors. So we've been experimenting with stuff really since late 2010, 2011. What's in Swarm is the best version of it so far, and the stuff that's in Foursquare is like particularly awesome, which I'm really, really proud of. But the company has been trying to do this stuff for 4 years. It's really, really hard to do. And this is why like these apps don't exist yet. And we do a better job of it than I think most anyone out there. I think we're doing stuff that Google is struggling with, that Facebook is struggling with. I don't think Yelp can do any of this stuff. I think it's like we're inventing this future of local that is just not there yet, and we're uniquely positioned to do it because of all the things we've done over the last 5 years.
You mentioned check-in fatigue. What are you doing to grow the user base of Foursquare beyond people who want to check in or into that game? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, what are we doing to grow the user base? Like the way that you grow the user base for anything is you make it like better, faster, and easier. And like that's what Swarm is designed to do. Like if one of the problems with the older version of Foursquare was like, hey, it's not as useful if all my friends aren't checking in all the time, then let's make a really light version of the check-in that's just kind of ambient, this neighborhood sharing. And let's see if that, what we're finding is that people are comfortable with that. They enjoy having this awareness. They enjoy the spontaneous meetups that come from it. We build some products that allow lightweight planning inside of that. And so we've designed this app around, let's make the fastest, lightest, easiest way to like keep up and meet up with your friends. And people dig it so far. Like ask me again in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months, is it significantly better than Foursquare? And I think the answer is yes, because we made vast improvements to the product to make it that much easier for people to use. And I think that's the real key to the success. We look at what we're doing with Foursquare, and like there's amazing stuff that's built in there, but it's really hard to tease out of it. Like I don't know how many, a lot of people raise their hands when I said to use Foursquare, but I don't know how many of you folks are using it to search for things on a regular basis. If you haven't used Foursquare to search, like that's totally fine, but I would suggest that you give it a shot. A lot of people are like, I didn't even know you could search for places in Foursquare. But once they try that, they realize, oh my gosh, this is much better than Google, this is much better than Yelp. And one of the things that we really want to do is make it very clear to people that this is one of the best local search tools that's ever been built. And if we really simplify the experience, like that's how you grow usage. That's how you tell a better story about the product, and that's how you raise awareness for it.
Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Cool. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Anything you want to add before we go?
Yeah, your homework is, you got two homework assignments. I'll be checking at the end of the day. The first is download the Swarm app, play around with it. Let me know what you think. I'm @Dens on Twitter. I would love your feedback. The second is, if you have Foursquare but you have not been using it for local search, try it for a week instead of the other local search tools that you use, and then report back on Twitter, email, whatever. Let me know what you think, because I'd love to hear your feedback. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Awesome.